Yeah, and just as a, you know, we do have Kevin, who is a great asset, but he has given his notice, so we actually need 2 people, Mayor, so please get us those people. Okay, great. So I have assigned myself to share the thought today, and I just want to make it simple and quick, and it's just, you know, I think we're kind of on the potential of having some flooding, right? It started, it's happening, it might continue to happen. And I just think maybe we ought to all just be a little more generous with ourselves, generous with our neighbors, and help where we can, instead of being stingy with our time and our resources, because it might be time to help your neighbor. You never know. So that's my thought. And then, yeah, let's just jump into the pledge.
Okay.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so the first item on our published agenda is a public hearing scheduled for the conceptual subdivision acceptance of the Stokes-Stevenson Industrial Flex site. This is an administrative decision, and so that's cool. So what we're going to do is first hear an explanation from staff about what this project entails, and then we'll have the ability to hear from Stokes-Stevenson, and the commission can ask them questions. After that, we will open the public hearing for anyone who wishes to participate in the public hearing. We'll hear from the public. If the public has questions, the commission will take note of those, and we'll discuss that with the applicant after the public hearing, and then we'll go on from there. So that's kind of the order of process, and if you need a reminder, I always do too. So, Corey, are you presenting this one to us?
Yes.
All right.
Thank
Let's
you.
hear it.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the commission, as indicated, this is administrative decision. You'll be hosting the public meeting. As you recall, or the public hearing. As you recall, a few meetings ago, the Stokes-Stevenson's project came before you. This is also known as the Trinity site, Cyro Steel. There's a lot of nicknames, but it's the green buildings out there in the southwest area of the city. They planned on developing the property. You've seen the site plan, the conceptual part. They'll be coming back to you for their final design, but you've seen their conceptual plan and the layout. As part of the project, they plan on selling the individual buildings, and then the landscaping and parking lots will be held in common. That's called a planned unit development plat under our ordinances. You could also nickname of condominium. Condominium's more of an act than the plat, but people say condominium, things of that nature. So what will happen is they'll sell individual buildings. All the owners of the buildings will take care of the remaining property. So the PUD plat was necessitated, as you're familiar, about how we subdivide property, create lots, what's the expectations, and the applicant has now submitted that planned unit development plat. We've reviewed it. Most of the work that you're going to see on developing the site is coming through that site plan process. So when that final comes in, they'll have their construction drawings, how the improvements are going to be lined up, and how things will be developed. And you'll see the final documents in that. The subdivision, we have 3 steps to go through for now. We have a conceptual, where they're just giving you a preliminary idea of what they're planning to do. They'll come in with their preliminary plan, which will really reflect what they're going to be accomplishing with their final site plan. So you'll see them either together or just one after the other, probably the final site plan and then the preliminary subdivision, where you might see them in the same meeting. And then you would see the final plat come subsequent after the final site plan approval. And that's the process to record so that they can sell. So we've gone through the conceptual. We agree with the PUD layout. The PUD is fairly flexible. The idea of a PUD is to make sure that It matches the design and layout of a development that you approved on a site plan. And so we believe contingent upon a future site plan coming to them and the construction drawings coming into that, we're pretty familiar with how conceptually it's going to develop. So we're recommending approval of their conceptual subdivision at this time.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions for Corey? Oh, great, all right.
Well, just I want
Yes.
to clarify, so the developer is building on the site, so some existing buildings will remain,
Correct.
new buildings will be constructed, and the intent is that they're just going to sell those buildings. And
Yeah.
The next, whoever buys them, the building owners, will then be responsible for the maintenance of the landscaping and everything else.
Yeah, correct. Just a subtle cue into there. The property is actually in two elements right now. There's two different parcels. Historically, they've been used as one site, though, so that's why we're seeing a complete site plan of Trinity. Trinity will not be part of this Flex subdivision. It'll be an independent existing lot from the past. You'll see a final site plan with them. They will take care of their landscaping, bond for their improvements on the Trinity as they upgrade the site under our ordinances. You will see the off-site cross-access agreements that will occur onto the Trinity site. So that'll be an important component to make sure that the other remaining acreage with the three buildings will be dependent on those off-site cross-access agreements and infrastructure. But it's a
This new
separate lot.
development, more or less, I don't want to say ignores, but just leaves as is the Trinity.
Yeah, the
portion
main
of the
portion
site.
of the Trinity site that you see will remain, other than the upgrades to landscaping, fencing, and screening that are required since they're selling off the larger piece of property.
Gotcha.
The Centerville Flex PUD will be the property that's sold off from the Trinity, and that'll be independent plat with three buildings for sale. They might keep them for a long time, but there'll be opportunity for purchase at some point.
Okay.
Hope you caught that little subtle differences between the Trinity site and their site.
Corey, you had included an owner's affidavit, which I couldn't really read. What was that? Is it just part of the application?
It's just part of the application,
Okay.
who can represent the project.
Oh, okay, okay.
It
And
may not
then,
have scanned very well.
yeah, this is page 2, yeah, I couldn't really read, okay. And then did we work out any issues with West Bountiful?
Excuse me. We're still in that process, so you
Okay.
see that, recalling that memorandum of
Yeah.
understanding. And so the last condition of acceptance is addressing that is located in West Bountiful. West Bountiful's agreed to allow Centerville's review process.
And they're still okay,
And
nothing has changed, I guess.
Nothing has changed, and we'll come back and work those details with West Bountiful. But
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we clearly, and everybody understands that West Bountiful is in charge of West Bountiful's portion
Yeah.
in case they disagree with the final layout.
Sure, okay. All right, does anyone have any further questions? Okay, who's our representative for Stokes Stevens? It's your turn. Come up, introduce yourself. Tell us about the project.
Yeah, so I'm Sam Nelson. I work with Stokes Stevenson. Appreciate you all having us here, and Corey as well for, he's done a great job at being our advocate and helping us understand what we need to do at the site, because it is a little different project, being, with Trinity or Syro Steel next to us. There are some things that we are gonna have to help them address along with this. So just as Corey clarified, we have our own separate 3 parcels that we purchased, and then we bought those from Trinity. And so we're gonna be developing that. And then alongside of that, we're gonna be helping Trinity upgrade their site and bringing them up to code. So, but yeah, as far as our plan with the site, we plan to develop 3 buildings there. We are long-term holders, and so we plan to hold these buildings for a while, so we have some vested interest in maintaining the site and keeping it, keeping it valuable. And eventually, yes, we will want to sell but we are long-term holders. And so with that, we will plan on coming back with CCNRs to be sure that, we have some community regulations for the area there. But just as Corey said, that it's not a part of this conceptual site plan or subdivision plan, but will come later on. So I don't have anything else, but if you have any other questions that you'd like to ask us directly, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you. Do you guys have questions? Okay, I have a question. I know you said it will come
Yeah.
later, but I'm just curious. So when you sell out the building, maybe how will the landscape that's under that building owner's responsibility be delineated? Because it's not like it's clearly identified, because the three buildings aren't like surrounded by lot lines and a fence. and
Yeah,
so-
exactly, yeah. It'll be based pro rata, so based on the building size, and then you take the whole, landscape area and just the percentage of the building size, you basically take a percentage of whatever, landscape area that you have there, and so.
Do you think like they would pay into an HOA fee that would then maintain all the landscape as one item? Or like, I'm just wondering, because when you have like irrigation lines and this one's here and this one's there and they crop, like how do you manage that?
Yeah, and those all are within, the CCNRs that will,
Okay.
but I guess very simply to how that would work is there's interest that certain building owner will have as part of the community as a whole. So whoever, I guess, has the most interest in the community as a whole has the most voting rights there. And so there will be voting that will have to take place, almost like an HOA type.
Okay. Yeah.
Situation.
Sometimes, so I just want to make sure the landscape's maintained, because sometimes you spend all of this effort and money to revitalize this area and landscape it beautifully, and then it's not clearly identified who's going to maintain this. And then it gets lost and forgotten and broken, and then it dies over time. And then we only complain to Corey, and, he doesn't like to hear it. So I just would like to make sure that you clearly outline how that's going to be taken care of, so that it ensures the longevity of a nice site.
Yeah.
I think a landscape is an important component of a nice site.
Yeah, and again, our CCNRs, I'm sure Lisa will be involved in kind of going over those and making sure we hit all those points there too, so,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
I'll just jump in and piggyback. For an owner's association with landscaping, that's fine, but there's also going to be asphalt, there's going to be underground private utilities. I'm sure just want to make sure your organization is going to be thinking about that when you do the CCNRs.
Yes,
Or like snow removal, man, we've done that a lot this winter.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
Trash removal, et cetera. Yeah.
Okay. Well, no more questions then. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're gonna open up the public hearing. So if there's anyone from the public who would like to come up and speak to this, we would really love to hear it. So when you come up public, if you could just state your name and where you live, that would be great.
I'm Phil Anderton. I live at 251 North, 500 East. I don't want to speak to it. I want to ask a couple questions. Because I am confused when they say sell a building. Are these rental units or are they selling individual units in the buildings?
So we'll make a note of that. You can ask all your questions, and then we'll probably give the time back to the applicant to
Okay.
explain all that.
And then the other concern, the other question is, this was an industrial site, galvanized steel. Are there any environmental concerns, cleanup concerns of the property?
Thank you, those are good questions. Are there any other members of the public who have questions? Okay, by chance, did we get any submitted? Dang, okay, someone out there, please submit one day, that'd be great. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing and ask Sam to come back up and address these questions, and I jotted down some notes if you need a refresher.
Yeah, so the first question dealt with when we go to sell, how will that be done? Typically what we do is if we are going to sell a building, it's the whole building itself. The whole building will be sold. to another, private individual or group, and they take on ownership of the entire building, whether there's 1, 2, or 3 tenants inside that building. It doesn't matter. They own that building and they take care of everything in regards to that building. So hopefully
They
that
have the
answers.
ability then to rent it out, should they desire,
Yes.
or use it for their own
Yeah.
throughout.
Correct. Yeah.
So the most likely scenario is there would be multiple tenants in each building that would be leasing space in that building. It's just when you sell it, it means they're leasing from someone else instead of your company.
Correct. Yeah.
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 Whoever the next owner.
Yeah, and then the next question dealt with, soils and galvanized pipes, if I'm not mistaken. So what we have done, and Corey's been a big part of this as well and has heard a lot. So we've done a lot of testing with the soil because there has been some concerns about, contaminated soil. And so we've had, our engineering group, that they're RMEC, they deal with, specifically with environmental issues with this. We've been working along with the DEQ, so the Department of Environmental Quality as well, to be sure that we're following, the right standards and proper, remediation of this site. And so we're still working through the different requirements that need to be taken place before we build the building. And what we would plan to do is actually remediate the entire site. And so what it is there's 2 different areas that have come up as contaminated soil. It's not the entire soil itself, there's just 2 main areas. And so with these areas, we plan to go in and test these, which we're currently doing right now. And then we get back with the DEQ and they tell us how to properly dispose of these soils. And so our plan is to go and remediate the soil as best we can so that we can have these buildings and not have to continue to go through any other environmental, management plans, but that we'll be able to be almost free and clear of the contamination there. So, yeah,
Great, thank you.
no problem.
All right, Planning Commission, it's time for us to discuss. So, does anyone have any thoughts? No thoughts?
It's a complicated site, obviously, given that it's in 2 different cities and it's got, the existing Trinity property there and then the other part of it. But I don't know that that's anything we need to deal with directly. So I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of what they want to do.
Sounds like staff has to deal with the negotiations between cities.
Yes, what the memorandum of understanding says is Centerville can use its processes for development approvals, but there obviously will be a timed-out discussion between the developer and the 2 cities, and the 2 cities discussing whether we're going to adjust boundaries, whether there's a fair share of tax sharing, who's responsible for what, and that'll be worked out as part of the final site plan process, so. Yeah, there's a lot of work.
Yeah.
The subdivision is the least,
It's the easy part.
yeah, the easy part of the worry. The worry is how we'll develop the site, what needs to be remediated, how that's going to be remediated, and then what's the negotiation with the West Bountiful, Centerville City, and the developer.
So Corey,
In terms of that, we are planning on doing an interlocal agreement. We have been in some conversations with West Bountiful, but it was determined that we don't have enough information at this point. We're at conceptual subdivision and site plan, and so we need some more information. And so we can, do that, as Corey said, later on. And it'll likely be a condition of approval, whether it's site plan or subdivision, that we enter into that interlocal agreement.
So we just do all the subdivision type work and then it will go to the cities to do their interlocal agreement? That's kind of the process? Or is it simultaneous?
We have our processes and they'll be conditioned upon that. So you could be simultaneous. My suspect is that the city is going to be, at least from Centerville's side and my side, and I don't want to speak for Lisa, but we want to know the details of what we're building there, so that we can have those questions answered. And I'm assuming West Bountiful then will know how that's being developed. Then they'll go through how they expect their recognition of this development and their fair share of costs, whatever they may be, for their side. And that will likely be probably post site plan approval, final site plan approval, but it'll probably be pre-recording of the final plat,
Okay,
is my guess.
thanks.
So Corey, remind me, I think we talked about this last time. Is Centerville City providing the water, the culinary water for the site?
The tentative plan is for Centerville to do the water. There is a line connection available in West Bountiful, but right now the engineering is focusing on Centerville providing the water.
And there is no secondary water there?
There's no secondary water.
Okay,
So
thanks.
I would say that Centerville's, what's the proper cliche, the lion's share of provision of services? I haven't studied up where lion's share comes from. I get worried.
No, I think, from my perspective, as far as a subdivision, conceptual subdivision goes, it meets requirements for that, and I look forward to seeing this again as it progresses and seeing some development on the site, so. I hereby make a motion for the planning commission to accept the conceptual subdivision plan for the Centerville Industrial Flex Development, AKA Trinity Site, subject to conditions 1 through 6 in the staff report and suggested reasons for action A and B.
Second.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Any last minute discussions before we vote? All right, let's just vote.
Aye.
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 Great, super. So, good job. You'll get to work with Corey more. It's gonna be awesome. Okay,
Sam just loves that.
I'm sure he does. You're great to work with, Corey. It's how you get things done. Okay, so our second item on this published agenda is also scheduled for a public hearing. It's the preliminary subdivision for the Canyon Point Centerville development. This is also an administrative decision. So again, we'll follow the same pattern where we will hear from staff, outline the petition, and then staff will discuss it with, or the commission will discuss it with staff, and then we'll hear from Mr. Morris, and then we'll open the public hearing, and anyone at that time who would like to comment can give us their comments. Again, like we did, we'll write down any questions and give it back to Mr. Morris for answers. So we'll follow that order. Is this one you, Corey?
It is.
Yes, let's hear it.
Thank you. This is a preliminary subdivision, but it involves, again, the concept of a planned unit development. But now we're dealing with a different zone and a different types of uses, and we're also dealing with a different status and progression of the project. If you recall, the Canyon Point development has gone through the initial development process of conceptual site plan and final site plan. So currently, they're zoned residential medium, proposing a couple of twin homes, duplexes, single-family attached, depending on how you want to label it, and then I think was it 6 or so single-family homes on the project, but it's zoned residential medium. It is being developed with a private lane and street with those residential units, and they can proceed and have proceeded to begin construction on the final site plan. So their approval for construction drawings, improvements, stormwater management, sewer, water, all of those improvements have been looked at and deemed acceptable by the city for developing the site. And so they're underway. However, if they chose to just develop the site and not proceed further, they would be units for rent, owned by one single entity and renting those out. The desire of the developer is to be able to sell the individual units, and so that's the purpose of the PUD plat, the planned unit development plat is again, we will create the footprint of ownership, common areas, limited common areas, for the residential units. And eventually, as that plat gets recorded, they can be offered up to sale for purchase. The status is we are at preliminary, so we're in the middle step of the process. So he's shown conceptually how he wants to divide up those units. We are now seeing the draft versions of the plat and how the private areas, the limited common areas, limited common is usually like driveway for use by the resident, and then the common areas, which is the landscaping and open space areas of the project, use by all. So we're seeing that. We're seeing the initial draft of the CCNRs and beginning to see how that project will be platted and put up for sale. And so we've looked at the requirements for preliminary. Again, we have the construction drawings, and so I call out an acceptance that they can use those construction drawings for the site plan as long as they're consistent with the engineer's approval. So we believe that this middle step, again, is a little bit easy because we've already have a site plan. It's not going it together. They've already been approved for development. Now we're just preparing the paperwork to be recorded so that the units can be sold. So we're at middle step, and we think it's ready to move to the final step. So we're recommending approval.
Okay, I have a question. Just help me understand, limited common area.
Sure.
Because I see it, on this, whatever this document is it it's not a plat, is it a plat? It's not a plat.
Yes.
But it kind of like makes each unit like a donut. So it goes around. So tell me, is that area, so like these guys are gonna be in an HOA, and then the master HOA can get to all of that area to maintain the landscape, or what? Explain to me why it's donated like that.
Yeah, and I think the developer can give you maybe intricate details of what they're thinking, but in generally, you have the private area, which are the center of the donut you're talking about.
Yeah.
The square donut,
Yeah.
the center, that's the ownership.
That's what they will physically buy.
They physically buy
is
and
it the same
title it.
size as their house? Is that the
Yes.
footprint of the house?
Or it'll be within that footprint. The
Or
footprint of the
footprint
house
could
will
be
not
within
extend
there.
beyond that box.
Okay,
And so they'll own that little, for lack of better terms on the map, postage stamp
Yeah.
area
yeah.
for the unit. Limited common can flux quite a bit depending on what they want to do. So often a limited common area is the driveway. It's common so that they can make sure that the driveway is maintained and taken care of, but you're the one that's responsible for that. The HOA can step in if you're not going to, but you may
I
be.
don't see any driveways like outlined on this.
Yeah, because they're very short driveways in that limited common area.
So I wouldn't be able to fit my F-350 in my driveway.
No.
Got it.
Well, it doesn't appear you'd be able to fit any vehicle in the driveway.
Yeah, I think even in the garage, the F-350 extended cab won't fit in the garage
In
either.
I can't live there.
Smart card.
It's gotta be a spec.
Yeah.
What are
you
those teeny
gotta-
spec, anyway, but,
Yeah.
okay.
So you got that footprint, then like driveways,
Bye.
often, particularly when you're dealing with like townhomes, in this case, we got quite a number of single-family homes. That limited common area is like your backyard of your home. Think of it your back or side yard areas. It's still, the dominant control is the HOA to make sure you maintain that, and they have enforcement procedures in their CCNRs for that. But it's really designed for the backyard or the side area to be used by the resident, so that other owners don't just come trespassing and trouncing through a backyard area.
Might all be fenced in,
Might all be fenced in.
not, that
Yeah,
may or
the-
may not be left up to the homeowner depending
Yeah,
on.
and whether they want to take care of the landscaping. So an example on some is, I think it's the Porter Walton, the HOA takes care of the front yard. You have an option to have the HOA take care of the backyard. So sometimes it's structured that way, but there's still some common control for the development aesthetically and maintenance, but it's really said, okay, but this section is for your use and not for other residents to come into your area because it's intended for your sole use. But they don't actually own it fee title. So,
Okay,
So here we have combination of three. The unit's going to be owned, limited common area around the perimeter of that unit for use by the resident. And then you have the common space improvements, which are some common landscaping and a private lane for the project that everybody will pay in their fees to help fund and maintain it.
Do we know yet if this private lane, have you seen its cross-section?
Yes, it was approved during the final site plans, 27 feet, and our ordinances require it to be constructed to city street standards.
Seems like there's like just a sidewalk in some sections and not
Yes,
all.
there was a waiver of, we start out requiring sidewalk on both sides of a private lane, but that can be waived during the site plan if you show alternative paths.
Okay.
And because there was not units on the opposing side of most of that street, they're not carrying that
Yeah.
sidewalk on
Okay.
most of that side.
Good jog of my memory.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Where we have the other private properties, yeah.
Anybody else have questions besides me? All right, Mr. Morris, you're up.
Great.
Tell us all about it.
Corey did a pretty good job, Chad Morris. Yeah, Corey did a pretty good job of explaining really the limited, common, and private. And really what we see, the reason for the limited common is because we do want to dictate more of what happens in individual property yards per se. And so, yeah, that's kind
What
of
do you envision?
we envisioned probably someone will have a little bit of a deck back there, but they can possibly put fences up. They have to be a certain type of fence that matches the fence that's going to go behind on the property, be on the outskirts of the property. No exterior, no separate dwellings or buildings, detached buildings, no sheds at all back there. It's possible, we do have kind of a little dog run back over on that far corner, that far southwest corner. But it's possible someone may want to fence in their area a little bit more so they can even have a private area for their pets. I don't know. Where the CCNRs will allow for up to 2 pets that are not a nuisance. But so it's trying to be friendly to homeowners, but also maintain some order. Yeah.
Can I ask, I have questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good questions.
So on unit 8 and 7, remind me why you have that completely common area to the west of them. Is
Behind.
that drainage, was that?
Yeah, that's what kind of, there is some berming back there that directs extra, if I remember right. It's been a while since I've reviewed that question. Maybe Corey would remember better than I do.
Well, it just,
Ew.
I'm just interested because if unit 8 and 7 choose to put up a backyard fence, I know the property to the west already has a fence there, then you're creating an alleyway back there that's just unusable space, for lack of a better term. And I don't really like unusable space. I want to use it. You know, I just
So that
want it to have a
northwest
purpose.
part there, that's where your retention area is.
That's the retention.
Correct. Retention is very far northwest.
So I think that is the pathway for water to get to that
Which is-
retention.
That's where the
My
swale
recollection.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what you're having is most of the water is going to go out to the Canyon Point Lane and
tie into the storm drain.
tie into the storm
Correct.
drain system, and there is a detention in the northwest corner that's in that common area. It's sized in a manner, and this is why we've created some things, that the low point is in that southwest corner.
Right.
So everything will be propped up, most of it'll drain into the lane and be able to be picked up into the detention. But there's some surface water that can come in that far southwest corner, and that berm is to direct that little bit of surface water over to that detention. It's detention, it's sized to handle a certain expected flow, but if it exceeds it, and why the detention basin was originally in this corner, but if it exceeds it, where would it go?
Well, we don't want to flood out the neighbors to the west.
So we
I
moved
remember
the
that.
detention,
Right.
the city engineer had to move the detention to the northwest quadrant, and if it exceeds the capacity, it will spill out
Into the
into the
street.
city street and enter our storm drain there. Because you have a nearly 10-foot, 10-foot difference between
Right.
Granite Square and this project.
I'm just trying to picture myself standing in that area, and it's just no man's land.
Yeah, it is, and you could put a limited common back there, but now we have, if they fence it, and we need to make sure that that surface water drains and it's maintained properly.
Yes, but still, you know,
But you're right, it would be a little bit of an alleyway.
Into an alley.
it turns into an alley, and I don't even dare say it, but, you know, they just can be problematic for safety issues. And if I am one of those residents, I would always be like, well, who's over my fence? In the gapper, you know, it just, I don't know if there's another way to do it. But
Yeah, I mean, you can always design it. Is there another way to do it? Yes, you can not put fences in that area, as they have a little bit patio, and they'd have the back fence for the
and
Granite
maybe
Square.
those homeowners have that option, right? He didn't say they would be
Yeah,
required to have
but
fencing.
But he indicates he wants a small patio opportunity, so you create that. But ordinance-wise, we don't really have a leg to stand on when you can and can't have a
stand on
fence.
ordinance legs, I know that's, but I'm just
But I
saying,
do agree with it can be designed to be a little more functional,
yeah.
and maybe that's something that, at the
So-
bequest of the,
What you're saying is at best, we can strongly recommend?
yes.
All I'm
Strong
saying
encourage.
is- All I'm saying is, I picture myself standing there or living in one of these units, and it just doesn't feel right. So if there was a better
There's a
way,
fence there.
Well,
Yeah.
so I think
If
there's
it's not
two,
fenced,
well,
it's
so I think
just
there's two solutions then. You could say no fences, which doesn't sound awesome, or you have a fence, maybe it's limited common all the way to the property line, but you have an internal easement.
I was just gonna say, could you have an easement?
Well, I think this might be something to follow up with the city engineer and our drainage utility supervisor, because we have had problems with developments where there are, you know, built-in permanent drainage swales, and they get altered, and that's when it causes problems. And this will be as we've said, this will have some water drainage requirements, so that might have been a request from us, you know, so that we have access, or, you know, they can be maintained, because you put them in private property or even limited common, and people don't remember what's on the plat.
Sure.
I wish I could tell you it's a wildlife migration corridor, but that would be stretching the truth.
We see so many geese back there, just, I'm just kidding. No, but I understand your point, I do, I think
There's
It
very
makes
limited open
sense,
space in this development. And so you're just even limiting yourself even more. I don't know if there's another way, but if there was, it'd sure be great if you could find it.
no, and
Underground the facilities in that area, you know, if you have an alternative design, but.
Pipe it, yeah, in the ground.
So instead of using a swell, it would be more like a piping system that would take the water from the southwest to that detention facility, and then you could, in essence, make those lots bigger, and the limited
Yeah.
common could go all the way back to the property
But I
line.
think Lisa makes a good point. Yes, design-wise, that would work, but if it goes unmaintained and gets compacted with debris and soil, then we have the same.
Yeah, I think less maintenance is better. I mean, less maintenance requirement.
Unless we enclosed the whole system and then they maintained it and TV'd it regularly.
I mean, it does come back to the point of, if the owner wanted a fence there, they could put it there, but if they don't need a fence there. So it does give them their own options to handle I mean, in the sense, if there are not, I guess it is still kind of a corridor if they do just fences to the side of their properties and leave kind of that gap. But I actually would kind of think that it does give, it plays both ways to help maintain that area if the city, if the owner, the homeowner has that option and decides, well, I like it that way, that's what I want. But I guess I guess you could have rascals back there, going back and forth to the dog, using the dog park and,
See, I would, I mean, if it were my preference, I would extend the hatched area all the way to the
to the property line.
with the expectation of access and maintenance for the swale and for the drainage.
And,
That's-
yeah, that's possible too,
Yeah, somewhat of an easement, I guess you could say.
yeah.
Which
And I don't know, maybe that ends up in the CCNRs or something.
Well, that would require a whole amended.
Well, but that could go to the CCNRs.
I think we're going a far afield.
Yeah,
I'd
no,
love to
it's
go
true.
far
We are, well, I mean, I feel like we're kind of dancing a fine line between what was on the site plan and what we're talking about now. Obviously, right now with the subdivision, this whole concept of limited private, or what's it called, limited private?
Limited
Limited
comment.
common.
Limited
Yeah.
common,
Yeah.
that's what it's called. This whole
Yeah.
idea of limited common, maybe that's complicates things a little bit, but anyway. A strong recommendation.
Yeah, I'm in that sense, I'm trying to think what we need to change. I don't think it'd be too difficult, but, I mean, if the city would prefer fencing all the way back, I mean, again, though, they don't have to have fencing.
They don't have to have fencing, but, if they are gonna put up a fence, to Heidi's point, I think it's better to not have an alley there.
Yeah.
If they put up a fence, so. Anyway, I guess, Mason's right, that from a city perspective, from a planning commission perspective, I think that we're flirting with the devil here, but, anyway, I think you understand.
The devil's in the details, remember that.
Yeah,
But I think you understand the concern.
yeah. So, and it is now, tell me this, if we threw into the CCNRs that no back fences can be put up there, would that, or do you want them to go all the way back?
I just
Whether
think
they,
that's hard
yeah,
because then, I'm XYZ and I need a service dog and he needs to go out and use the restroom. I mean, that gets tricky.
If you got a pet owner, they're gonna want to fence it.
Yeah, yep. I think everybody's probably gonna wanna fence it, because otherwise, like you said, I mean, people might just walk back in there, hey, there's a dog park, I'm just gonna walk behind, everybody's not even gonna know, walk by, and I'm gonna use it, and I don't even live here. Boop,
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna walk back out, and nobody's gonna be the wiser, because I'm walking in everybody's backyard. I don't know. There's a myriad of
True.
possibilities there, but I personally just look at things like that and think, that's just so illogical.
What if that was somebody's best idea ever?
It wasn't. It cannot be. It cannot be. It is, to Lisa's point, it's the cheaper version of conveying water from point this to point that, to mitigate the flooding concerns. It's the cheaper option. So it's not the best option, but it's the one he's choosing to go with. He can do what he wants with this, because we have no governance over it, but that's just my,
Yeah, I also think that we weighed heavily on the flood issues because the Granite Square folks came to
Yep.
those meetings.
Yeah,
And so we
With good
chose
reason.
the drainage over the aesthetics in this
Yeah.
case.
but it's not the only drainage option.
No, you could put in just
all
a
I'm saying.
surface, concrete.
Yeah. You
We
do
are going
lots of different
through,
things.
but-
Anyway, any other questions for the applicant on my wild tangent? Okay. Do you have anything else to add?
no.
Okay.
Those are really good thoughts.
Please let me stop. Yes.
You've done great.
You've worked me over enough.
Sorry, Chad.
No,
Thank
you're
you.
good.
Okay.
So, thank you.
All right, we're gonna open the public hearing at this point. So, if anyone has any comments or questions for Mr. Morris, now is the time for the public to come forward. Come and state your name, and we'll take notes if you have questions, and come on down.
You've addressed, I think, to begin with, the retaining pond. Now, I'm with
Hold on just a second, you mind stating your name first?
Eldon Marshall. I'm a homeowner on the adjoining property, Granite Square. So, you're aware of that, My home would be right in the middle of that backyard.
Okay, great.
Okay, and that, I think it was indicated that there's a drop of about 8 feet.
Yeah.
From, and I'm talking 8 feet drop within 30 feet. I got a basement on my home under that. Our big concern, I don't have, John Andrews with us, he's the president of the HOA. I think one of our main concerns is a retaining pond that has been suggested in this project. And it looks like this is a little different plan than the last one I saw. So we don't know where it's going to be, how big it's going to be, what the construction is, or if you're even going to have it. So that's our big concern downhill from that. I mean, I'm 30 feet from that pond and 8 feet down. So you can imagine if something gets loose under there, what's going to happen to my basement in my house. But we've got 5 houses along that back. So I think that's our main concern. This looks great. I don't want to, I want to downgrade this project because I think it's a real benefit to us and a real benefit to the community. As we've looked at some of the plans, it looks like they're great, very similar to the ones we have, and I think will be a real upgrade on it. But just these concerns, our main concern is the drain, especially now, I suspect, when I hear the snowpack is record high right now. And I don't know how we fare right now. You know that better than I do, but you can see what our concern is, as close as we are, and the placement and the construction of that. That's my main concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Eldon.
Connie Metzen. We own the duplex on the corner on the lot, the big lot there. And I don't understand this necessarily, but maybe Chad can explain it. All the way along, we were concerned because we will be surrounded by 3 streets now. And Chad, are you fencing that all off? Yeah. Okay. So that takes care of one of our concerns because that was a back and forth thing. Are you doing Harvey's property too? Are you going to have a continual same fence along all of that area? Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be, okay. Okay, so that was a concern. My next concern is the bus stop. You're going to have to move that bus stop. So, because that is down right between our driveway and where his driveway is going to be, so you're going to have to get the UTA people to realize that bus stop's got to be moved, and it can't be moved to the corner because that's too close for people to turn around the corner. It would take up the whole corner piece from our driveway back to the corner, so that's something that you need to think about. And then I don't really have a concern for what he's building. Oh, are they 2 stories, 1 story ramblers, or basements?
We can take all, I'm writing all your questions down.
Are they-
We'll ask them at.
Okay, are they basements or 2 stories or what are they?
Okay, we'll find out.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I'm just thinking, because you've got neighbors down below there, I don't know if Chad's the fence he's discussing that the owners can have it or not have it, but just from the prospect of, you've got to realize those properties have been there a long time and they've had all the privacy in the world. And to tear everything out now and have no fence for those people, I think.
You're talking like a perimeter of his
So,
property.
yeah, because, I mean, your privacy is gone now, 100%. If there's no fence, you have 0 privacy. And everybody's going to be staring at everybody, and it would be very uncomfortable. So anyway, that's all my questions. I will find out what the plats are for the houses, but I think we've come a long ways in the right direction.
Cool, thanks, Connie. Anybody else want to come and speak? We'd love to hear it. Going once, going twice? All right, we'll close the public hearing.
Chair Sagrub,
Yes,
we always
sir.
give the developer the last word. I think he can answer most of them. I tried to answer it narratively, but if I can just get the mic and the screen.
Go for it.
We have approved this development and the design has been engineered already. So this is not, tonight's not about the engineering of the site. It's about platting the site for sale. But if I can just take a moment while we have a few folks here and just
Yeah.
demonstrate visually up there.
Well, I steered us that way, so it was my fault, Corey.
That's all right. It's an anxiety that I probably have fielded 20 or so calls about the drainage, and we've had, and so as a city engineer. So we're aware of the fall coming this way. It's heading west. So most of all your waters are going to be in this private lane.
Yep.
That's most of it. We're handling the waters off of 400 East to move into the city system so that we don't have waters coming off the 400 East into that private lane. So that's been designed also. So the predominant waters are going to hit the private lane. They'll hit their storm drain boxes. We've got storm drain boxes that are being installed on either side of that to try to handle the movement of water down 400 north. The detention is going to be located here. I believe it's calculated at a 25-year storm event. So it's not the maximum amount of water that could come into on that sizing. And that's why it's not being retained. They're getting exemption of retention. We're not going to build a great big basin to hold the water until it evaporates up into the air. It'll be detained, which means as the system fills up, it'll fill into that detention pond, and as the capacity opens up, as the storm moves its direction, it'll drain back out. The issue came into is what if we have an event above a 25-year? This was the original place. And if we went above the 25 and didn't have it sized for retention, we would have some problems. And so what they've decided is there may be a little bit of waters coming off these back, a little bit on the surface water. I mean, water does run a little bit, but it's not a significant amount. You do have some surface waters that are coming from this open space here. So it is being moved through that channel we talked about with the fencing to this detention. If we exceed the 25-year storm, there's a bubble up that comes out into this 400 North Street so it can enter the city system. So that way, very little will go over that retaining wall into that development. Now, what lands on the rocks and things of that nature, you're going to see a little bit, but the main waters are heading to detention with an overflow into the city street. And that's why it was moved from here, which was the major concern at the beginning of the discussion, and then moved to here at the request of the city engineer. So hopefully that visually explains it, but it has been designed and accepted by the city engineer at this point.
And Corey, in relation to our record water year that we've had so far this year, other than any type of ground saturation, the water coming down off the mountains wouldn't necessarily affect this property here because the creeks are north and south of there, right? They're not running through this property.
Yeah, and this has been a concern of the city council as of late. Since '83, Davis County's developed a lot of infrastructure. Centerville has spent a lot of time with Davis County, and I would say that our public works crew has strong-armed the county on a number of issues in a good relationship way. And so you have major facilities that are constructed already. If you look up at the old debris basin that's now developed with 3 homes by the county, and we still have an overflow area. We call that the dinosaur debris basin up into the canyon. We have several debris basins that have been built on each of the streams. And so most of that water is going to stay in those stream beds. And that's really where the concern of flooding right now is if we get debris that washes down and plugs off an inlet or something of that nature, it could create some problems. If we get some areas, if we get an excess flow, we have some designated streets that will pick up that flow and take it down to a lower basin. And so our crew feels pretty confident that we're going to most likely be okay. Now, if we had a continued rain coming and not going away, we'd be a little bit more concerned. I do think that if you have a sump pump, your groundwater's pretty saturated a little bit. I mean, it's sinking. Our wells were low last year by almost 30 feet. So it'll be good to recharge that groundwater to get our wells back up that we have in the city, but it'll take some time. You know, we're cut more than 200 feet down, so it takes a while for it to percolate that deep into our wells. But we should be, for the most part, okay. The data tells us in 2011 we had a significant amount of water. We have more now, no question we have more now, but we had very little problems in 2011 with this new infrastructure. And so we feel pretty good, other than something plugs a culvert or something of that nature, that most of the waters are going to be staying within their channeled and design parameters. So if you live along those channels, yeah, you're going to see some excess water, and maybe some sandbagging will help.
So just,
Thanks, Corey.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. His question was about the site right now has been excavated and cleared. They're in the process of, clearing
Yep.
and grubbing it. And so sometimes sites in that condition can cause flooding.
Yes, it could create some excess water. Our Cameron, our water guy with the SWIP plans, monitors that. We have the same issue with Summerhill Lane
Yeah.
and discharging that and handling the excess water off of that site. I think we've torn down a home, so down at the lower end, we could just create a temporary swimming pool
Yeah.
if we needed to.
You
in
know,
that
and
area.
so I don't know if the berm needs to just roughly be built now to give, the Granite Square people a little more peace of mind.
Yeah, we can forward to Cameron. I know he's visited the site already
Okay.
with the BMPs, but we can certainly inform Cameron to just take a look at that as a courtesy
Yeah.
to make sure that there's not.
Might help them have
some
a
problems.
peace of mind. Okay, cool. All right, Mr. Morris, if you could come back up and I'll ask you a bundle of questions.
Yeah.
So if you could talk about, just remind us the fencing and what your plan is there.
Yeah, and I think I spoke to Chuck, had the same question on this, so Connie must not have been there, but yes, we're doing fencing all around.
And is it just
Create
gonna be like a
privacy.
vinyl fence? Have you chosen it yet?
The plan is a vinyl
A
fence,
6-foot
correct.
vinyl fence?
Yep,
And it's just
privacy
gonna
fence.
go on the south boundary straight and then between Granite? So it's just like an L?
Yeah, so Granite currently has fencing on most of
okay.
the
So
side
you don't need
there.
another fence
So
then?
I think we're filling in a lot of gaps
Okay.
that they don't, if I remember right. And then on the south side, we're putting in a fence.
And then on the north side of your lane,
Correct.
and it does another little L there?
Yes,
Okay.
and I am a little bit, I think on the plan, we have, the fence goes up to a certain point of the front yard. I didn't want it to be right up to the street.
Right.
And I
You can
talked to
have
Chuck
clear
about
view,
it, if I remember right.
Just site triangles and things
So,
like that.
yeah,
Yep.
so there's plans there, yeah, that's all on the site plan.
And then-
And Connie you can actually see that, it should be filed at the city, so she can
Cool.
look at all of that. So, yeah.
Okay, and then her next question was regarding the bus stop. And I know we had talked about that in the first meeting.
Yeah,
And have you notified Mr. UTA?
UTA.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have notified. I'm pretty sure I have not. So I'll check. I'll do some notification.
Yeah, and I'm
To
sure,
UTA.
UTA, I'm certain has guidelines, like we have to
Yeah.
be this far from an intersection, so I'm fairly confident they're not gonna move it
My-
north, they're gonna move it south.
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
Just kind of the east of Unit 1 is my thought that they'll do, or in that corner area.
That'll be great. And maybe when you're in construction, might be a good time to reach out to them. They might not know about it and they might need a temporary.
Stop. Yeah, that's a
Who
good
knows?
idea.
That would just be really great if you could.
Great,
And then,
yeah, I'm glad she's looking
Just
up.
remind us, Connie asked about the stories, 2 levels, 1 level, basement. Give us a.
Yeah, again, those plans, I believe, are even at the city, so she can go look at all those plans as well. Or she can text or email me and I can send her plans. I'd love to have her buy one of them. But maybe she doesn't want to live that close to the rental though, but.
Never know, sometimes it's easy.
I know. No, it's a Rambler with a basement,
Rambler with a basement.
with a basement. There are 2 levels, but no second story
One
above
level
ground.
above ground, yeah.
Yeah.
So not a split entry, you got maybe
Nope,
two
just
steps up and
a
in.
single level
straight in,
with a
boom, yeah.
basement. Yep.
Cool, love it.
Yeah, so, and then just Corey did mention that he spoke to Cameron, I spoke to Cameron, yes, or at least got an email yesterday. I've been in contact with them the last week. I got a call from somebody in Granite Square concerned about that as well. I've talked to my contractor. The SWIP plan was updated. So we've taken care of everything, and our contractor, I need to drive by because he said he's hoping to have it done by today.
Okay,
Obviously, the request kind of for these updated SWIFT plan came, I'm trying to remember, was it yesterday or this morning or yesterday, I believe. So he said, I'm going to try to get to it, have the backhoe or whoever does that, put that berm up, and then we're also putting an additional silt fence there.
additional silt fence, getting
Do
the
the-
berm in, so Granite Square can,
They should rest easy. Yeah, they should rest good.
okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, I think I got, did anyone hear any other questions I failed to ask him? Okay, thank you, Mr.
You're
Morris.
welcome.
All right, group. Are you ready to talk about it?
Of course.
All right, let's do it.
I just had a comment. I think Corey brought up a good idea that, good comment that this has all been engineered. They have a final site plan and that's how they're moving dirt. They could build all of these without this action here tonight. But I did go look at the final site plan and I wanted to clarify or correct. It looks to me like there is an underground storm drain line behind that, those
Yeah.
7 and 8.
Because
So
I
it
was
is
trying to
underground.
remember in my mind the final site plan also, and I didn't, because it didn't show those limited areas.
Yeah.
You know,
There's
it just
another
showed
hatching.
open, yeah.
Can't see what that hatching is, and then there's also some elevation, so obviously I'm not an engineer, but I just wanted to clarify, because I was saying a swale, I don't know, but
Got
it
it.
appears to me there is an underground storm drain line to bring it all the way, because remember, we are going to put it out towards Parish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the plan we're looking at is not a site drainage plan, it's more of a plat, so
Yep.
it's hard to tell from that.
No, I think this is in line with what we have expected as we've talked about this through the site plan process. I don't see anything on this that surprises me or, is different than what I've already seen from the site plan. So, from the perspective of making a subdivision out of it and selling off individual units, it makes sense to me and works with what I feel like at least I've anticipated, so no questions or concerns for me.
Nobody else?
Great.
Okey dokey.
I hereby make a motion for the planning commission to approve the preliminary subdivision plan for Canyon Point in Centerville Development located at approximately 347 North, 400 East, subject to conditions 1 through 5 in the staff report and suggested reasons for action A through C.
Second?
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Anybody have any last words before we vote? All right, Mason.
Aye.
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 All right, great. This motion passes, so you're on to your next step. Good job.
Good discussion today.
Thank you for addressing all of the concerns. Thank you to you residents who came and voiced your concerns and your questions. I appreciate it. I think we've given you some food for thought, and you can just go on your merry way, or you can think about it. So, there we go. Okay, let's see what we got next. I don't know what we have next. My agenda's not open. Is it the,
Community Development Director.
oh, it's time. Let's hear it.
Want the good news or bad news first?
Bad. Give me the bad. The bad news is we don't have a full commission yet.
Yeah, there's your
Sorry.
bad news.
There can't be any worse than that.
I did remind the city manager in our meeting yesterday.
Thank you.
Um,
I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Kevin's leaving, and then you're gonna be down to 4, and I'm just saying.
Well, it makes my job easy. I don't have to write reports.
But then no development can
Well, yeah,
I don't know if they get a standstill, and
then the
we're not in
ultimate
compliance.
consequences start coming
The
about.
state gets mad at us, and I'm just saying,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
the ultimate cause.
I mean, I.
Good news, bad news. The items tentatively are not ready for your agenda.
Oh,
The IMs?
The items.
Oh, the items, okay.
I might have mumbled.
so what you're
Items.
saying is,
And I was just going to go over the moderate income housing updates for you and the report changes that we would see
Yeah.
aware of, but that can be delayed if you want.
so you're saying there might not be a meeting?
There won't be because we're past the noticing, right, Whitney?
It's tomorrow, so we would.
So we could all just meet and learn.
You could meet and learn about moderate income housing.
Kevin had a visible
Real-
Sorry, did I not, was that not a good poker face?
Okay, so we're talking
Sorry,
about,
I kind of threw you under the bus. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's all right.
It was just so comical. I had a visible response.
okay, so we're talking about April 26th. No meeting.
Canceling the meeting.
And Kevin, are you coming on May 10th? Or is this now your last meeting?
No, I think, what's my date? I can't remember.
It's May something.
I think it's like May 8th or something, May 5th,
May
maybe?
8th.
Well,
you
I can
stay
come- I
on
can
till
come,
your
yeah.
replacement is
I can
appointed.
plan on being here unless the mayor has already
Replaced you?
replaced me.
I'm not holding my tongue on that one.
So,
All
I know
right.
which way I would bet, and I don't need Kevin's body language to help me.
So, does anyone have strong feelings about having a meeting?
I mean, here's my thought, is unless we could knock out all of our annual training and all of that stuff in one shot, then, you know, let's not meet just to talk about moderate income housing, because moderate income housing is a snooze fest.
What? Bite your tongue.
But also, Kevin doesn't really get to vote because it would be his, potentially second to last meeting. So, y'all who are staying longer than him, you've served your time and I appreciate it and you've been great. I'll weigh your opinion a little higher. If anyone has an opinion.
So it sounds like if that's the one item to talk about,
And that's just my filler. It doesn't have to be.
yeah, it doesn't have to be, and there's nothing else, I would say we just.
Got his vote.
Yeah. All right. We won't. So, we have had more non-meetings this year
Yeah.
than
It's
any
been,
previous time I've been a part of
it's
this.
been a little bit odd.
Just FYI.
The two patterns I'm seeing is that we have developments that have come in with applications, but they are not aggressively fulfilling the requirements.
And I would
Agenda?
100% applaud you to make them become sufficiently figured out before it comes to us. Like, that's good.
And then the other is I think we've slowed a little bit. And my third reason is this all started when Whitney started.
Thank you.
What can I say?
It's all right. You know, there is.
Tongue in cheek, for the
You know
record.
what, though? There is some economy stuff going on.
there is, but, you
There's a
know,
lot to consider.
we also could have finished our South Main Street plan and kind of put out the open for business sign, but no, can't do that.
So should we do that?
Oh, come on. I'm going to have a visible reaction now.
I mean, yeah, we could do things, sure. Kevin, I
no.
agree with you.
No, I'm saying that should have happened in the past when we started on that project. But
Yeah, I've brought up your goals that were sent in memo to city administration. Also reminded them of the other half, if you will, of the parking study matter. I know that there's been discussion at the city council on tag teaming some vision work for the city and branding with the general plan. The city council seemed like, well, there were some concerns about going one direction with visioning and then turning around with a general plan, and what if they're inconsistent with each other? And that was a long discussion at the council. I think it took about an hour. And some of them were saying, well, let's get going with the general plan. And they said, is the planning commission ready? And I'm like, oh, they've been long ready.
Were you not paying attention, city council, the last time we mentioned it to you? Okay.
So I think that's still going to work itself out of how they do the visioning with the new city logo and expectations. And my concern is I don't want to ask what your vision is today to turn around and ask what your vision is tomorrow. Can we figure out a way to tag it together and get a good feedback? So that's what we're discussing now.
All right, well, so let it be written, no meeting. So let it be done, April 26th. We will not come here. Okay,
Everybody agree?
everybody agree?
Heidi really wants there to be a meeting.
Well, I really would like to train everyone. I'd like to have a full commission so that we could begin
That's
training.
true. You should wait till you have a full commission to do training. That's true.
All right, let's review the minutes. So Whitney's got them up on our screen here. Does anyone have comments for the first page? The second page? Third page? How many pages are there? 4 page?
There's
Page
just
four.
3.
There's
Last
just
page.
three pages.
No comments?
No.
Okay,
I make a motion to adopt the minutes as stated, including page 4.
Oh,
Thank
it's
you.
just part of the motion.
I second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, I make a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Second.
Second, aye, it's fine.